Welcome to Kev's Travel Stories. Each week I'll be bringing you a story from the weird and wonderful world of travel, a world that can change the way you see life and love and even the way we find meaning. Places that are iconic and sometimes surprising and even terrifying. So sit back and enjoy while we go on a magical mystery tour together. Welcome to Kevin's Travel Stories, and this week I will tell you how I nearly ruined a pilgrimage I was on the very first day on the road. How did this happen? Well, it's an interesting story. I was on the Via Francigena. This is the great pilgrimage of the medieval times that ran from Canterbury all the way down to Rome and the Holy Seas, for pilgrims to visit apostles and the Pope himself. And you could even go on to the Holy Land. If you're interested, you can listen to my separate podcast on the city of Siena, which was the destination at the end of our route. But we had started in Lucca, and it didn't look after the very first day as if I get any further than Lucca for what happened. Just a little on the pilgrim walk. It started with the great Saint Sigeric. He was the archbishop who journeyed from Canterbury to Rome to receive his various blessings from the Pope. And just imagine this. He took 80 stages covering 20 kilometers a day for a total of some 1,700 kilometers. That's 100 days it took the great Saint Sigeric to travel. Nowadays, you do it in 3 hours by Ryanair. Now, you have to make your own choice as to which is better. I'm sure it's going to be a very different experience. Anyway, we started, as all modern-day pilgrims start, not from Canterbury, but from Lucca. Lucca is really a wonderful hidden gem. I'd never been there before. Worth a visit all on its own. Famously home to Giacomo Puccini, the creator of La Bohème and Madame Butterfly and those wonderful, wonderful operas. We started on the second day our pilgrimage. We started off at San Miniato. We were going to go all the way to the Gambassi Terme, which is 24 kilometers or 7.5 hours walking. Now, I am a reasonably fit guy. I am in reasonable shape. And I'd done a little bit of walking beforehand. I should have been warned by some of my companions because we went on an organised trip by CaminaWays.com, an Irish company that specialise in this sort of pilgrim walks. And I remember looking at some of my fellow walkers, and they had that serious look. Their legs were strapped up and they had the right sort of boots and they had these sticks. I was just there in my runners. I should have known better. We started off road, tracks over these small rolling hills, classic Tuscan landscape. It was the most beautiful and wonderful walk you could possibly imagine. And it particularly touched me because you were walking in the actual Tuscan countryside beside these extraordinary vineyards. And I can remember on that first morning before it all started to kick off, I just stopped. I put my hand in the orange soil. I lifted it up and squeezed and watched this blood-red soil cascade to the ground. And I thought, well, Michelangelo walked this very route from Siena to Florence. That was something that really touched me, and it sort of made the hairs on the back of my head stand. So we started and we went on. We had a break for lunch and pounding on. But the sun was out and it started to creep up to 30 degrees. The wind got up and the dust started to get up the nose and in the eyes. And the humidity kicked in. And after about 14 of the 24 kilometers, we were starting to feel the pain. And we'd taken our final drop, and I'll never forget the last 10 kilometers. There was no water. We'd run out. There were no shops to buy the water because you're in the middle of this Tuscan countryside. I'm a stubborn fella, but it took every ounce of me to actually continue to put step after step. And as I went into my 15 kilometer, that's a long way for someone who's not used to walking. I felt a blister forming on my right pad of my right foot, and I had to hop along. I felt this pain in my knees, and then my lower back started to go out. Then my mouth started to dry up. Then I started to sort of almost hallucinate. By the time it had become 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was really struggling. Meanwhile, the seasoned walkers were striding on. "Come on, Kevin, what's keeping you back there?" I bit my lip. I could have said things that would have been very unkind, and certainly not what should come out of the mouth of a would-be pilgrim. Anyway, I'll never forget the last hour. Every time I put my foot down, it was like a stab. You were walking on red-hot coals. My knees, my ankles were swelling. I had beads of dried sweat coming through the red dust of the clay on my brow. I was starting to get shimmers in my hands, and my throat was dark dry from the lack of water. I can remember going up to one of the water stations with these ancient fountains. Nothing came out. And it was with some superhuman effort that I managed to push myself to the final extreme and finally round a corner. Though the lady who was leading us kept on saying, "No, it's just another corner." I think she was just keeping us going. Finally, I saw the coach that was picking us up. I threw myself on the ground and let out the most long wail of sheer pain mixed with a delight. Well, all I can say is the beer that evening, because we soon found and stopped at a shop, was the most welcome I've ever had. And there was a certain sort of pride in having walked the guts of a marathon on my first day. But the next day, I could not move. Not one step. My pilgrimage was over. Luckily, we were in San Gimignano, which is a wonderful walled hilltop medieval town where you can just easily spend a whole day. It's a town that used to have 60 towers because they didn't have a wall around their town, and these rich families built a tower to live in when the hooligans came calling for money. So this was a wonderful place to stay. And to be honest, spending a day looking at the art galleries, eating gelati, sitting sipping a beer in this extraordinary San Gimignano was worth it. So please check out, if you go on a pilgrimage on the Via Francigena, do check out San Gimignano. The next day after, I was able to walk again, but only gradually. And the following day, it was all made up by what happened next. And this, dear listener, was one of those highlights of my life. We were brought outside of the Col del Val d'Elsa, a beautiful little Italian town, and we hit the Elsa Trail, or the Sentia Elsa. This is a stunning, secluded walk path along milky blue waters and waterfalls. The Sentessa is a fantastic walking park, one of the most beautiful walking parks in the world. The path starts at Spung Bridge, the Porto del Sponga, which is located just outside the village of Col di Val d'Elsa. It reaches all the way to Dibrato Waterfall, jaw-dropping, wonderful place. And then you finally end up at the San Marziala Bridge, which is an iconic bridge, and you know you've made it. Absolutely. I still get tremors of excitement when I think of it. And you see these small stone-shaped river crossings, little wooden bridges, small waterfalls. You're hopping over little stone crossings. The trail has been compared to the Kwangsi Falls in Lao Prabang, which I just visited a few weeks ago, which are in the heart of Laos in Asia. And I'd have to say, well, the Kwangsi Falls are a little larger, but they didn't have the magic of this particular place that we went to, the Elsa Trail. It was completely, absolutely magical. That afternoon, we were now drawing to the end of our pilgrimage, my part-time pilgrimage. We came across this extraordinary place called Monteriggione. It's also mentioned in Dante's Divine Comedy, believe it or not. Monte is a medieval walled town. On this hill, you see it in the distance, and I can remember walking along, and by now I'd got fairly hardy, and the blisters had sort of healed, and I could get along. I'd got my fitness back. And this is a walled town on a hill to protect it from the Florentines, who caused a lot of trouble in those days. And I can remember just looking at it, it was like a film set. What really struck me was, as you walked up to one of the two gates, there's the Porta Fiorentina, that opens towards Florence on the north side, and the Porta Romana, which faces Rome on the south, which was where we were heading to in the end. It was getting late, and they were going to close the gates, and you got this sense of what it must have been like a few hundred years ago, to be locked out, where all the hooligans and the ruffians and the murderers and the rapists would come and literally get you and shake you down and slit your throat. One other thing happened on that final afternoon. A thunderstorm the like of which I've never seen shook the ground. The lightning cracked down. We had to take shelter under a bridge. I'll never forget it. The river of water that came flooding down. And for maybe 10 minutes, I think we were all in fear of our lives. Such was this wrath of God. So what an amazing end to the Pilgrim's Walk. And it's extraordinary, the Via Francigena, the poor cousin of the famous Camino in Spain. But remember, the Camino in Spain had, in 2022, nearly 500,000 pilgrims. My Italian pilgrimage from Lucca to Siena has only 50,000. So take a pilgrim's walk. I think on every level, this modern-day pilgrimage ticks every box. And even though I had a very bad beginning, I have to say overall I experienced friendship, exercise, deep conversation, laughter, fantastic meals, welcome drinks, and the feeling of true mental and spiritual well-being. I cannot actually quite put it into words, even though I just did. And as the week progressed, I noticed what I would call the slough effect. It's like as a snake sheds its old and useless skin over several days. We shed our uncomfortable everyday state of background stress and anxiety and phones and emails and blah, which appears to be the lot of most people, with all that constant digital distractions and interruptions. But the profound change came, and by the last day, I was in a free flow. That sense of the zone, calm, relax, open, ready to receive any of these peak experiences that come when I think you're fully immersed in one activity. And I think my peak experience came when we found ourselves in that extraordinary river, surrounded by the vegetation, nature at its best. The birds chirp and sang, and I can remember a butterfly appeared magically following me. And it had these rainbow colours caught in the sunlight that streamed through this forest. It was a bit like Avatar. It was one of these extraordinary James Cameron moments. And that really disarmed me, that moment of pure unadulterated bliss where you're so happy just to be alive, surrounded by this soundscape of water, pure air, sun speckling through the trees, the sweet smell, the light breeze, the warmth of nature, and companionship, I'd have to say. And not many holidays have given me such quality moments. I'm grateful for it. So I would share with you, become a modern-day pilgrim, at least once in your life. You won't regret it, I'm sure of that. But all I would say is, don't make the mistake of trying to walk 24 kilometers on the first day and half of it without water. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please share it with one friend. I'd like to get more people enjoying things like pilgrim walks and visits to these extraordinary places where you'll see the ghost of Michelangelo himself. All the best from Kevin's Travel Stories.